Hey, it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? I have a old-fashioned first look for you here, just a bit of a voiceover with a lot of looks at the Moto devices which have just been announced. Now, we're going to talk about the Moto G 5G and the Moto G Stylus at another time, but you'll see a few shots of them here in this video. But the main one that I wanted to show you is the flagship of this round, and that is the Moto Edge Plus for 2023. Now, across all of the devices that were presented to us during an event out in Chicago, there were some key features that Moto really wanted to drive home. Larger batteries, good battery life, high refresh rate displays, 5G performance at more affordable prices, and stereo speakers for better media consumption, and of course, all of the stereo speakers are going to be powered and supported by Dolby Atmos. As mentioned, the Moto Edge Plus is the flagship, and with that, you're going to get all of the specifications that you would expect from a flagship device. And the cool thing about the Moto Edge Plus this year is that it seems to be hitting all of the right marks. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 with 8GB of RAM and 512GB of onboard storage. The design is actually quite nice with a 4 curved design where there are actually curves on the top and bottom, not just the sides. And as you can see from the profile of this device, it's actually quite thin, which is pretty impressive considering it does pack a 5100 mAh battery. Premium materials all around, including an aluminum frame, Gorilla Glass Victus on both sides of the device, and all of this is sporting an IP68 rating. With the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, there shouldn't be any issues when it comes to performance. I wasn't really able to put a whole lot of extra stuff onto the phones, but a couple of the colleagues and peers did put a couple of games on there like Call of Duty Mobile, and it seemed to be working just fine on here, especially on this POLED 165Hz display. It's a 6.7-inch screen that does come in at full HD Plus resolution, but at this size, Full HD Plus should be more than enough for most people out there. Really, the resolution of the screen might be the only spec that's not necessarily super high in the flagship market because everything else here is pretty high powered. The specs, of course, support Moto's own additions in the software. As per usual, there's a Moto app that shows you all of the extra things that you can do in this version of Android, including all of the gestures that we have seen in many Moto devices, including the chop chop in order to turn on the flashlight or the twisting action in order to get straight into the camera. And on top of all of that, Moto's own Ready For apparatus, which allows you to extend the experience of the smartphone to larger screens, whether they are through glasses like what you're seeing here, or to larger screens like TVs, or even the PC that you might be using alongside this phone. I think Ready For is a great layer that's added on top of Moto's own devices, making them great companions for the larger screens in your life. But let's get back to the cameras. Moto really didn't hold back with this one. There's a triple camera setup on the rear, and then the front-facing camera is actually a 60-megapixel shooter. And on the topic of the front-facing camera, I have to give Moto some credit because 4K at 60 frames per second is possible across all of the cameras, including the front-facing shooter. Those cameras on the rear are also pretty well thought out. You get a 50 megapixel main camera, you have a 12 megapixel telephoto made primarily for portraits, and then a 50 megapixel ultra wide that also doubles as a macro. It seems Moto is really learning from some of the high powered cameras we've been seeing in a lot of other smartphones and making sure to have the right capabilities with the right hardware to back it up. Portraits are a big deal for Moto this year, as in the portrait mode you are able to shoot at 35, 50, and 85mm equivalents, and it all shows up on the interface. But there are also plenty of other features. I just talked about 4K at 60 frames per second, but there are other video features that include video night vision. You can do a horizon lock so that you can make sure that no matter how you are moving the phone around, it will stay level. And then things like video portrait, which I tried out for a little bit during my time with the Moto Edge Plus, and I have to admit, it looked pretty good through the viewfinder, but of course, I'm going to take some shots with this phone once I get my hands on a review unit and bring you a real-world camera test coming soon. Overall, in the 1 or 2 hours that I've had with the Moto Edge Plus so far, I have to say, it really doesn't seem to be missing too much. Maybe that Full HD Plus resolution display could be a higher resolution, but that's like the only thing that I could really think of that was kind of missing in the Moto Edge Plus so far. But of course, we're going to find out more about it once I get my hands on a review unit. By the way, once I do get that, you will be able to see that in the box, the phone, which already sports that large battery, also comes with the 68-watt charging brick. The fast charger is included with this phone, which is always a plus. And finally, the price, which is actually fairly competitive as Moto prices the Edge Plus this year at $799.99. That puts it squarely in the running against other phones like the Samsung Galaxy S23 and the Google Pixel 7. An interesting comparison to make, when the time comes. And that will about do it for the Moto Edge Plus, but there are a couple of other devices that were announced alongside it, mainly the Moto G 5G and the Moto G Stylus. Now the Moto G 5G sports the Snapdragon 480 Plus, so you can already tell that it's going to be a more budget-friendly device, a little bit more mid-range. However, the rear camera system does come with a 48 megapixel main sensor and then a macro lens, so you can take that for what you will. It can get up to 4 centimeters close to any subjects if you really want to get close up. It does sport a still large 6.5-inch HD plus display, but that display can also do 120 Hz refresh rate. So even if the resolution is not all that high, you can get some very smooth frames out of this depending on the game that you're playing. That particular phone will come in at $249.99 unlocked and comes in white and gray varieties. And then finally we have the Moto G Stylus, which takes a lot of the tropes of the Moto G but adds in an extra tool, and that is of course the built-in stylus. Moto told us that many of their users who actually get the stylus-enabled Motorola smartphones really do use the stylus, so they continue to create this particular smartphone for that particular market. Aside from that, the main differences are that it comes with a 50 megapixel main camera on the rear, and the MediaTek Helio G85 is what powers this whole device. It still has a 6.5-inch HD plus display, but the one on the Moto G Stylus comes in at 90 Hz refresh rate, which is still a little bit better than most of the 60 Hz displays that we see in the market today, especially at this price point. The Moto G Stylus actually comes in a little bit cheaper than the Moto G 5G at $199.99, and it's a pretty good price considering you get some extra ergonomics via that built-in stylus. Moto does a really great job with the G smartphones in remaining competitive at their price points, but it's with the Moto Edge Plus that we're seeing that Moto is trying to make sure they bring their prices down a little bit year after year, and it certainly shows this time around given how much you're getting for that price. So it's actually a compelling argument now to compare the Moto Edge Plus to some of the other phones from Samsung and maybe even Google in the Pixel lineup that are around the same price, and we can certainly see where that goes once I get my hands on a review unit. But with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for checking out my first look at the various Moto devices that were announced today. I'm really looking forward to checking out the Moto Edge Plus, but for now, I'm going to call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody.